And blessed to be a part of your day. Kevin Miller in the morning, KIDO Talk Radio. Coming up, can you marry your cousin in the state of Utah? Boy, there's some stimulating news, but it's been a while since we've done this. The idea of review and commentary on the state legislature. By the way, another point of contention, the idea that do we need a legislative body that meets every year? Or should it be every 2 years? We talk about this back and forth, but are you happy with the progress or the lack of progress pertaining to certain bills in the state of Idaho? Obviously, people are having their opinions on Marsy's Law back and forth, whether or not Marsy's Law is a gun grab or for victims' rights. We obviously love hearing from both sides here at 580-5436. 580-KIDO. We will take a look at that. We'll also take your calls on a variety of other issues, most notably when we think of the legislature and, you know, they live in a fairly isolated world. And their world is based on, you know, going into the city of Boise, as Representative Scott told us a while ago. You go in, you do your job. Sometimes you get to go home. Sometimes you don't. Sometimes you get to stay in crazy places and do things that you wonder to yourself and say, you know, is it really worth it? Is it really worth it when we're thinking about the laws and such? So we've got a lot of things to look at. An emotional one that we'll start off with before we get to Utah, and whether it's kissing cousins or marrying your cousin or whatever we call it. And this has again, it's a tough one. It's the case of Mr. Adam Paulson, who was found guilty of vehicular manslaughter in the death of 24-year-old Maddie Dusky. She was struck as she walked across Eagle Road in 2017. Remember, this gained national attention when a judge sentenced Mr. Paulson to time served plus 15 years probation, and then he is responsible for paying child support for Miss Dusky's children. Last week, according to the Statesman, Mr. Paulson, who was driving drunk when he struck Dusky, appealed to the Idaho Supreme Court, saying that the decision was something he disagreed with. Did the magistrate court err in the finding of probable cause? Did the district court err in not granting defendant's pretrial motion to dismiss? Was there sufficient evidence at trial to convict the defendant? Did the district court err in instructing the judge? Did the district court err in not granting the defendant Rule 29 motion for judgment of acquittal? Now, again, the court conditionally dismissed the appeal because Mr. Paulson had not paid required fees for the preparation of the reporter transcript and the clerk's records. So his trial attorneys at the time were David Leroy and Gabrielle McCarthy, but his appeal filing indicates that he's now indigent once that he's confirmed by the court, and an appellate public defender will be assigned. So, and maybe the next time we have David Leroy on, we'll have to ask him about this. Here you have Mr. Paulson convicted of vehicular manslaughter, got time served for killing this young lady. Time served. You had Mothers Against Drunk Driving nationally come out and protest this case. Apparently, again, according to the Published Report, he's broke. He doesn't have any money, but he has enough wherewithal to appeal his conviction. Sometimes I think you need to just count your blessings. There is no blessing in this case. There's no blessing for Mr. Paulson. There's no blessing for the Dusky family. There's no blessing at all. Under Idaho law, for DUI vehicular manslaughter, the state must prove impairment was the cause of the collision. Right? People say that the case should have been dismissed at the probable cause hearing. This is Gabrielle McCarthy saying this. He said the state's one witness at the probable cause hearing was asked if Mr. Paulson violated any non-DUI law, and the officer responded no. Additionally said the state's crash reconstruction said in his report that it's unlikely that a sober driver driving at 40 miles an hour could have avoided the collision. The collision was unavoidable and unforeseeable due to several factors. It was dark, Ms. Dusky was wearing black, and the streetlights weren't operating, and there was little or no ambient lighting from the moon. Now, when you're drunk and driving, there is a crime to pay, a price to pay for the crime. Now, remember the term of Paulson's probation. He must pay child support for Dusky's 2 children, wear an alcohol monitor until further notice, reside in a sober living facility, not purchase, possess, or consume alcohol, perform 500 hours of community service, not drive a vehicle for any reason whatsoever. His license is suspended, attend 90 days of daily AA meetings, and provide proof to probation officers that he's doing all these things, submit to searches of his personal property and residence, maintain employment. And there we have it. And yes, it shows you that one stupid mistake. It scares me to death on these roads when we talk about impairment driving. And, you know, there was a great article, and we'll probably get into it very soon, from USA Today about the hazards of legalization of marijuana. We can't handle alcohol. I would like to think, I think we'd all like to think, that if anybody we knew, or gosh forbid it was us, had caused harm to someone, I don't think we'd have the chutzpah to ask for a reduced sentence. As the national chairman for Mothers Against Drunk Driving said, look, vehicular manslaughter is usually 3 to 5. Mr. Paulson got time served. Again, I disagree with the judge. She got it wrong. In America, you can say that. In Idaho, you can say that. The judge got it wrong. It's kind of like the person at work that always makes excuses. Well, I'm late because of traffic. I'm late because Bill talked to me in the hall. No, you're late because you're irresponsible. I don't know, Mr. Paulson. I would hope that most of us in his condition would dedicate his life to fulfilling those obligations instead of trying to get this thrown out on a technicality. And then you have the attorney doing the attorney's job saying, well, you know something, even a sober person under the same conditions. Yes, it's scary. People are irresponsible. We're getting ready for bike riding season. Look, it's raining last night, this morning, and there are people riding their bikes on State Street, on Fairview, on Chinden. I don't know why. Fairview Avenue last night, 5:45. I'm out there holding a sign. For what? I don't know. And there's a woman riding her bike. And you have to be extra alert, extra careful. Mr. Paulson wasn't any of these because he was, again, according to published reports, drunk. Now, the idea that you can have the legal system saying, well, we're going to, we should throw this out. It was bad. It was horrific. Whatever happened to just owning up to what you did? So we're saying because Mr. Paulson possibly could use a technicality to get the conviction thrown out, so he doesn't have to wear an alcohol monitor. He doesn't have to do any of these things. Because if he were driving sober, according to someone, an expert, that it wouldn't matter? I don't know about that. I do know about it. You got to own up to what you've done. There's a mom right now. Now, you're going to have some people saying, well, what was she doing out at that time of day? Now, from the national spokesperson for Mothers Against Drunk Driving, Paulson's extraordinary sentence is an injustice to the victim in the case and to the nearly 11,000 people who are killed by this violent, 100% preventable crime. Very good point. 100% preventable. This crime was. And now you have children without a mom. And a defendant who's indigent saying that he wants his conviction overturned. and he wants the state to pay for it. Again, I'm thinking dedicate your life to making improvements. Dedicate your life to making things better. Isn't that the lesson here? 580-5436, 580-KIDO. I think about this, and I think of those children and what it would be like to grow up without your mom, and what it would be like to read about what happened in the papers. And quite frankly, I think the judge made a bad call. Why in the world would you give somebody time served for vehicular manslaughter? 580-5436, 580-KIDO. You're listening to Kevin Miller on 107.5 FM, 580 AM, KIDO Talk Radio.
KIDO Talk Radio.
Hi, this is Ultimate Heating and Air.
Utah's doing a little legislative housekeeping, starting with the bedroom. State legislators say they're removing unenforceable laws from the books, and this week passed a bill that repealed the crime of having sex outside the marriage. The bill making it legal is headed to the governor's desk, and it's not clear if he supports it. Sex outside marriage in Utah was criminalized in 1973, classified as a misdemeanor. Tanya J. Powers, Fox News.
And we'll get to the cousin part in a minute. Let's get your phone calls. Kevin Miller here, 580-5436, 580-KIDO. We'll go to Ben in Garden City. Good morning, Ben.
Hi, Kevin.
Hey,
Thanks
Ben.
for taking my call.
Thank you.
Hi. I want to talk a little bit about the license plate thing. I think it's kind of funny. George Washington said that government's not reason, it's not eloquence, it's force. And like fire, it's a dangerous servant and a terrible master. And I think that the government talking about not hating is kind of like the wolves talking to the sheep about not hating. Maybe we ought to have a license plate that says "Stop government bullying."
Right. Or how about making Idaho great again?
I would like that. I think it's just the whole thing's a little bit silly. How about stopping the grocery tax and the hate that goes along with that? Because that's force. That's all force you're taking from the people. There's all kinds of things the government could do to stop the usurpation of authority and power.
Doesn't that really sound like the thought police, though, when we're talking about stop the hate? And we're talking about Ku Klux Klan, white supremacists, and all these things. And what does that mean? Does that mean stop opinion? Does that mean stop dissent? See, to me, that's what it
seems
says.
Like it.
Yeah. Orwellian.
It seems like it. It really does.
Well, Ben,
I'm
thank
not
you
a
for
big fan of that idea.
I'm with you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Ben.
You bet. Thank you.
Thank you. We go to Rich in Caldwell with Kevin Miller on KIDO Talk Radio.
Morning, sir. I have two quick thoughts on the issue of the gal being killed. First of all, for all of us who do not drive drunk or impaired or drink while we drive, that kind of thing, we're supposed to drive safely for the conditions. So if it's pitch black, no moon, can't see anything, I guess you need to slow down. So it's pretty easy to say somebody driving according to the law may have had that accident, but I'm pretty comfortable if I was driving in those conditions, I would slow down for those conditions. I wouldn't have had that accident. Number two, sure, people can ask, what is she doing out at that hour? I don't know. We can't ask her because she was killed.
Oh, that's a great
Those are
point.
my thoughts.
Thank you very much, Rich. And it does come down to responsibility at 580-5436, 580-KIDO. This in from, our affiliate station in Detroit, but there are people in Utah petitioning the state to get married.
It started
They happen to be cousins.
with a crush.
You're in second grade.
Yeah, it was like second grade. I remember I stopped her mother. I stopped her and I said, I'm going to marry Angie. And she said, no, I'm sorry, you can't, but you can be friends.
Family vacations would bring them together, but social norms would draw them apart again.
This is something that I've always felt very, life wasn't fair. Like, why did the person I want to be with the most and had the...
Why can't I marry my cousin? Again, we're not talking about a state in the American South. You can't blame it on those folks. We're talking about the state to our south, Utah.
most attraction to, the most natural feelings for why did you have to be my cousin?
They reunited after 10 years this winter, both recently single, both ready to take the plunge.
We're like, okay, this is crazy, but we're adults now. We're single now. We're just going to go for it. And, who cares what our family thinks?
They're crossing two big hurdles to get married. The most obvious is genetics. According to researchers at Columbia University, first cousins share 12.5% of their DNA. First cousins who have children face a 4 to 7% chance of their child having a genetic disorder, as opposed to a 3 to 4% chance for an average couple.
The genetic consequences, the biological consequences are very small. It's more, what people might think and say.
The second major hurdle is the law. Here in Utah, it is illegal for first cousins to get married unless they are 65, 55, if they can prove they are infertile. So
Now, wait a minute. You can marry your cousin in Utah if you're 65 or 55 if you're infertile. I thought that was against the law. The law is the law, but we're learning something new every day here on KIDO Talk Radio.
So the two went to Colorado yesterday to tie the knot.
As soon as we crossed over
So in Colorado, you can marry your cousin?
the state border, we're not married anymore.
The two are gathering signatures and hope to change the law here in Utah.
No one I've ever been with will make me feel as perfect as she does. And her being my cousin and some of the responses is a small price to pay. I've always loved you, Angie.
Boy, that's creepy. 580-5436, 580-KIDO for, well, I can't even say entertainment purposes only. And if you notice, it was a lot of I. Look, you shouldn't be marrying your cousin, right? But again, with marriage under attack, marriage being redefined, who knows what's next? I do know it's 8:25, Kevin Miller in the morning. KIDO Talk Radio, 107.5 FM, 580 AM. Let's get you to work safely and on time. Good morning, Dave.
News Channel 7's Eric Everett.
All right, a few things going on, talking about the Polson case. We'll get back to that in a minute. And really what Rich and Caldwell said, driving is a responsibility. Driving is not a right. Driving is a privilege. And my goodness gracious, I had to get on somebody here at the broadcast center. Somebody zipping into the parking lot really fast. Yeah, it's great. It's fun. It's exciting. But what happens if someone can't see you? Boom. Maybe the older we get, hopefully the more cautious we get. If you're just tuning in, we've got Adam Paulson. He wants the Idaho Supreme Court to look at his conviction of vehicular manslaughter, saying that he wasn't given due process, that if he were sober in the case that he wasn't, the accident could have been avoided. Are we blaming the victim, Miss Dusky, who's dead, who leaves behind 2 kids? It was dark outside. It was this. It was that. It is crazy. That's why you've always got to be careful. But look, the idea that you don't get any 3 to 5 years, you don't get any additional time, you just get time served. It was outrageous, an outrageous decision by the judge that we held her accountable for. And yet now, going back for more because he's broke, indigent, well, that would be tough. That would be tough to get a job after that. On the other hand, how tough is it for those kids without their mom? 580-5436, 580-KIDO. We're all responsible for our actions, are we not? And on a lighter note, you heard you've got 2 cousins in Utah that want to marry each other, and Utah seeks to throw out old restrictions on marriage.
Utah's doing a little legislative housekeeping, starting with the bedroom. State legislators say they're removing unenforceable laws from the books, and this week passed a bill that repealed the crime of having sex outside the marriage. The bill making it legal is headed to the governor's desk, and it's not clear
Somewhere pro-life is very upset about this.
if he supports it. Sex outside marriage in Utah was criminalized in 1973, classified as a misdemeanor. Tanya J. Powers, Fox News.
Imagine prosecuting somebody for that. Tea Party Bob joins us now on KIDO Talk Radio with Kevin Miller in the morning. Hello, Tea Party Bob.
Good morning, Mr. Miller. Some of the things you said this morning about what's going on in the legislature are quite disturbing, but let's get down to some of the nitty-gritty. I'd like to say to our legislators, especially the 2 who are sponsoring the bill for a don't hate license plate, we have important bills being shoved into committee chairman's drawers so they can't be discussed or voted on. And these 2 clowns come up with this don't hate license plate idea? How ignorant are the people we have elected to our legislature that a license plate is more important than the real legislation that will help change people's lives for the better, like repeal of the grocery tax maybe? I don't hear anyone proposing a bill to allow the use of Bibles for teaching history in our schools. Or for that matter, I don't hear anyone introducing a bill to allow prayer in our schools. You want to reduce hate? Think about it. I want to say to those two legislators that they should both resign and allow two people to run for office that actually get something done and will help the citizens of Idaho. It's time to call these types of legislators out for what they are. Self-aggrandizing sloths who have been in office for so long, they have forgotten why they ran in the first place. How about getting to work for the people and stop working for the lobbyists who have fought and paid for many of you? If you want to stop hate, get people to spend more time in church, less time listening to the fake media, which is where much of this hate has started and comes from. And on the question of Congress beating up on a Trump-appointed officials, it's high time we call attention to the fact that the legislators that are doing this are doing nothing but grandstanding for the fake press in hopes that they're going to be noticed for their harsh interrogation methods and outlandish statements. When it comes to the immigration issue, the only reason we are holding illegals is because we haven't fixed the laws. We haven't changed the way we do things. We allow them to cross and then we lock them up. Dumb? Yeah. Fix it. Don't continue to complain about why we're doing what we're doing. You're the problem, not the solution. Last year alone, we're talking about $5.2 billion a year in the smuggling operations by the cartels. That's a problem. What we have is just one charade after another to distract from the real problems with immigration. So if you really want to fix it, let's get to the nitty-gritty. Fix the laws. It has nothing to do with anything else. Thank you, Mr. Miller. I really appreciate
Thank you, sir.
to talk again this morning.
Our
Take
great
care.
friend. Thank you, Tea Party Bob, joining us. You're listening to Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio, 107.5 FM, 580 AM. Good morning, Maggie.
Good morning, Kevin.
And coming up, more of your phone calls, Terry, Scott, and Steve. We will hear from you. We go now to Jared Halpern joining us, Fox News Radio, Capitol Hill on KIDO Talk Radio. Jared, good morning.
Good morning, Kevin.
So, quite an interesting day ahead here when we're talking about the House voting on the anti-Semitism resolution.
Yeah, we think that's going to happen now today. It has been on hold because there has been some discussion happening within the Democratic caucus about what they want this resolution specifically to say. Obviously, this is a response to some remarks made by freshman Democrat Ilhan Omar, who has been critical of AIPAC, has suggested that lawmakers who are supporters of AIPAC and the pro-Israel policies that AIPAC lobbies for have an allegiance to a foreign country. That has been seen as a very hurtful statement, particularly from Jewish Democrats who serve alongside Congresswoman Omar. At the same time, there is a rising concern within the party about things that have been said about Congresswoman Omar, one of two Muslim women elected to Congress last year, a refugee from Somalia herself. And so there have been some thoughts about broadening the language being used to be more inclusive of all of the rhetoric that has gone on, make a more sort of broad statement so as not to have to return to this each and every time, you know, a member of Congress, whether they be Republican or Democrat, says something that is viewed as racially or religiously insensitive.
Of course, then you have a lot of people speculating, and again, speculation, but you're on the scene. How challenging is it for Nancy Pelosi to keep everybody in line?
Well, I guess we'll see what the vote looks like. This isn't really an issue about keeping everybody in line. I think what this speaks larger to is the challenge that Nancy Pelosi is going to have with keeping Democratic policy agendas on the front page. This week, the House is also passing their landmark legislation, H.R. 1. It is this overhaul of voting, election, ethics laws. It would do things like make Election Day a federal holiday. It is supportive of reducing the voting age to 16. It is supportive of expanding voting access. This is a big deal that Democrats ran on during the midterm elections. Now, it does not have a lot of support from Republicans. Yesterday, Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell said it would not get floor time in the Senate. But at the same time, this is what Democrats want to be talking about. They want to be talking about their policy ideas, their policy agendas, this big rollout of this big bill, and it has taken a back seat to questions being raised at every single news avail about Congresswoman Omar, about other statements, about how divided the party is over this issue on condemning anti-Semitism. And so I think that's the bigger concern if you're Nancy Pelosi is, what can we do? And listen, this isn't unique to Speaker Pelosi. I think talk to former Speaker Boehner, former Speaker Ryan, they will tell you the same thing. It's hard to get, attention on what you want attention on, particularly when you have, members of your conference that are saying things that, are going to get attention. So it's not a unique problem to Speaker Pelosi, but certainly I think that's the issue is, how many of us are going to be asking questions today about H.R. 1, or are we going to be asking about this resolution?
Well, meanwhile, any idea what the Republicans are up to?
In which branch? I mean, I think on the Senate side, you're seeing again the 33rd appeals court judge was confirmed by the U.S. Senate yesterday. Number 34 is going to be confirmed today. That's an extraordinary figure, and that really, I think, speaks to where the focus of Mitch McConnell, Republican leadership, the administration has been. The House doesn't get a say in judges. Obviously, after the nuclear option several years ago, it's much easier now to clear these judges, and so you're seeing that now, a focus, a laser-like focus by Mitch McConnell and Republican leaders to get these appeals court judges on the bench. Remember, these are judges who are one level below the U.S. Supreme Court, who hear a majority, an overwhelming number of appeals cases to reach the federal judiciary. Remember, the Supreme Court hears a very small percentage of actual cases. It's a lot of this work, a lot of the law that is reviewed, a lot of the precedent that is set at these appellate levels. And, President Trump has been very successful in getting, with the help of a Republican-controlled Senate, his nominees confirmed to the bench.
Jared, we appreciate you. Thank you, sir.
Absolutely.
Jared Halpern joining us live from Washington. Back to your phone calls. And we go to Terry in Boise with Kevin Miller on KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, Terry.
Good morning, Kevin.
Hey, my man. How are you?
Oh, getting a little better. I'm just fighting strength right now and endurance. Well, I'm afraid we're going to lose this country. I mean, I don't see the Democrats standing up, the Republicans standing up and fighting against anything the Democrats ask for. It's just like they accommodate. If I don't know if we ever got those letters and documents from the DOJ and the FBI for Jim. From Ohio.
Jim Jordan.
Jim Jordan. And not theory, but Trey Gowdy and stuff like that. I think if we got all that and shown the corruption, that it would dislodge this election and put them in severe thing. In having a two-tier legal system that Hillary gets to walk, and nobody's squawking why we haven't got those papers from the DOJ or the FBI, and saying that the president blocked the judicial system by firing Comey. It's so ridiculous, and we just sit there and take it. And where are we at on this repeal of the grocery tax? Do you have any idea?
Well, it's you and me right now. That's truly about it.
Nobody's pushing for it. I just don't understand it when they have an opportunity to do so. And this red flag laws, and what did you call it, the
Marsy's Law, that's what the critics are calling it, saying it's red flag law. But
Marsy's Law, what is that?
Well, it's designed to give victims a greater say when convicted criminals are up for parole and that sort of thing.
How's that relate to taking our guns?
Well, there's some provisions in there that people have issues with. It's been sent back to committee to address those issues right now, Terry.
Okay, good, because, we lose our guns, we're losing our country, we're about to lose our minds. You can't even go out here and drive. That was a great commentary you did on that driver. I mean, that is so ridiculous. Like you said, the judge got it wrong. But, it's getting fearful the way these people drive. Like yesterday, there was no reason for that crash on the Y. They're falling too close, phone in their hand and bashing the people in front of them. I mean, it's getting ridiculous.
Terry, God bless. You're still in my prayers. I love you, brother.
Well, thank you very much. Don't quit praying because I'm not out of the woods yet. I really appreciate that. I'd like to hear some of your mother's commentary on some of these issues if she could call in sometime.
Well, we'll work on that, Terry. Thank you.
Well, you take care. Love you. Be good.
Love you. All right, let's go to Scott in Caldwell with Kevin Miller on KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, Scott.
Hi, Kevin. Hey, I'm a first-time caller, and I've been retired for about 3 months, and I listen to you on my walk. And I got a question: is Tea Party Bob? Is he ever happy?
Oh boy.
I'm a fifth-generation Idahoan on my mother's side, fourth on my dad, and all that. It doesn't make me special, but he just comes on and he calls us stupid. And I'm a Republican, and my point is, put up or shut up. Run for governor. From what I understand, he has 25,000, 30,000 followers on his Facebook for Tea Party. They all gave $100. Hell, he'd have $3 million to run on. Instead of just being a broken record every day, do something about it. And as far as the license plate, Kevin, goes, don't buy it. If you don't like it, don't buy it. That's about it.
Duly noted, Scott. Thank you for the call.
Thank you for letting me vent. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. So we have somebody endorsing Tea Party Bob running for governor, and if you don't like the Stop the Hate license plate, just don't get it. More calls coming up, plus, well, did you see a lot of folks running around yesterday with ashes on their forehead? Should that be allowed in public schools? We'll tell you the story of one teacher that told a little kid, get those ashes off your head now. Does religious liberty stop at the public schools? We'll get you that story plus your reaction next. Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio.
Chiz off.
They put them on your forehead to show holiness.
William McLeod was the only student in his class with an ash cross on his forehead.
A lot of students ask me what it is. I was like, I'm Catholic's First Day of Lent, Ash Wednesday.
Ash Wednesday is the start of the Easter season.
They celebrate getting closer to God.
But the cross didn't stay on William's forehead very long.
And the teacher walked over and said, what is that? And I was like, it's Ash Wednesday, and I'm Catholic's First Day of Lent. And he's like, no, it's inappropriate. Go take it off.
His attempt to explain the meaning of the symbol fell on deaf ears.
She took me aside, and she said, you have to take it off. So she gave me a de-infection wipe, whatever they're called, and she made me wipe it off.
William says it happened as many of his classmates watched.
They saw a teacher wipe it off because they wiped it off in front of all my friends. I felt really bad.
The school's principal called William's grandmother as soon as she learned of the incident.
I was pretty upset.
The teacher also called.
I asked her if she read the Constitution of the First Amendment, and she said no and oh.
The Davis School District says what happened is not acceptable.
Why that even came up, I have no idea.
It wants students of all faiths to feel welcomed.
When a student comes into school with ashes on the forehead, it's not something that we say, please take off.
Later in the day, William received this candy and a handwritten message from his teacher.
It said, William, I'm so sorry. I hope we can move things from here.
He and his family hope this will serve as a valuable learning experience.
I hope it helps somebody, and I hope it never happens again, which I don't think it will.
There we have it, a situation in Utah where you have people censoring a little kid, a little boy. The little boy couldn't put ashes on his head because the teacher was being overly zealous, being overly politically correct. Now, the beauty of America, the reason why people came to this country and still come to this country is religious liberty, religious freedom. The little boy was doing nothing wrong, and the teacher was right to apologize. Let's hope that serves as a lesson for a lot of people.
Northern California federal judge Richard Seaborg, a President Obama appointee, wrote that the inclusion of the citizenship question on the census was arbitrary and capricious, and even said it threatens the foundations of our democratic system. He wrote in his ruling that the state of California did provide enough evidence showing the question could depress the count of immigrants and non-citizens, and that could harm the state's funding. Congressional representation is also based on the census count. Last year, Commerce Secretary Wilbur Ross said the question should be included to comply with the Voting Rights Act, noting it had been included in the census before the 1950s. Jessica Rosenthal, Fox News.
KIDO Talk Radio. Oh, those crazy, wacky, zany libs in California, they're mad that the Census Department, remember, according to the Constitution, every 10 years, we have to take a national census to determine how many citizens that we have in America. Legal citizens in America. And yet we have people that don't want an accurate count, that want to continue to elevate and inflate the bloated state of California to include people that are not citizens. Quite frankly, it's like this. If you don't have money for a ticket to a show, you can't get in. So if you're not a citizen, why should you be counted as such and increase a state's congressional district? In other words, rewarding that state for being lax on immigration, for having sanctuary cities, for being a sanctuary, a refuge, a destination for lawbreakers. And here we have a federal judge appointed under Obama saying that the country doesn't have a right to ask someone who is not here legally whether or not you're a citizen. Yes, we do have the right to ask you if you're a citizen, because if you're not a citizen, I'm sorry, that should not allow a state to gain more congressional delegates. That should not allow a state to have more people, because what's to cause a state to say, no, we're good. We're going to play by the rules. You know, just like what happened to Kristen Gillibrand, where you have people screaming and yelling at her for enforcing the law. If you don't know what happened yesterday, the Department of Homeland Security secretary was up before Capitol Hill, and you had a bunch of new, young congresswomen, maybe some not so young, that were yelling and screaming at her. I'm not hyperbolizing here. Yelling and screaming at her for separating kids from families. By the way, when you go to jail, you don't take your kids with you. It's not take your kid to jail day. It's not good for the kids to be in the jail with the other criminals. So therefore, if you're coming into the country illegally, you're going to have your children taken away. Now we have the outrage, we have the screaming, we have the yelling, we have everything else going on. And what did it accomplish? Except to try to humiliate the Department of Homeland Secretary's reputation. Just like we have Michael Cohen calling the president all these crazy names. Right? It's coming down to this. There are no shades of gray. You're either with traditional America or you're with the touchy-feely, hey, let's get angry and not obey the rule of law. Right? 580-5436, 580-KIDO. Coming up, a moment of courage. But first,